There are wounds that do not bleed, scars that cannot be seen, yet they shape the soul more deeply than any visible mark. Every daughter raised by narcissistic parents carries within her such invisible imprints, unusual traits born not from choice, but from survival. These traits whisper of shadows, masks, guilt, and hidden strength, and within them lies both the story of her suffering and the possibility of her transformation. The silent inheritance of shadows carried by every daughter of narcissistic parents begins in the earliest moments of her life, when the natural hunger for love, recognition, and safety meets an environment that reflects only fragments of who she is. A child learns who she is through the mirror of her parents' eyes, but for her, that mirror is cracked and distorted, showing her not her true self, but a reflection shaped by the ego, emptiness, or demands of her caretakers. She quickly intuits that her feelings, her needs, and her individuality do not hold priority. Instead, she must mold herself into whatever form secures temporary acceptance. What is denied in her outward life does not vanish. It recedes inward, pressed into silence, forming the foundation of the shadow she carries unconsciously into adulthood. This silence is not merely the absence of sound, but the absence of validation, a void where her authentic voice should have been allowed to emerge. From this silence arises a heightened awareness, for in an unpredictable emotional climate, the child must constantly scan her environment for subtle cues. She becomes sensitive to the moods, expressions, and tones that others might overlook. A sigh, a glance, a change in the rhythm of speech, all of these become signals that she deciphers instinctively. Yet, this sensitivity, while it protects her, also binds her to an existence of constant alertness. The shadows of her parents' unspoken dissatisfaction and unmet desires seep into her as though they were her own, and she begins to mistake their emptiness for her responsibility. Her inheritance is not a physical gift, but an imprint upon the psyche, a quiet shaping of her perception of self and world. She learns early that to express herself fully is dangerous, that to reveal her authentic needs risks rejection or punishment. And so she grows in silence, her laughter subdued, her tears hidden, her inner world rich but unseen. Over time, this hidden realm becomes her private sanctuary and prison. In solitude, she may create stories, dreams, and imaginative escapes, yet she is never certain if any of it holds value beyond her own heart. She doubts whether her inner life has the right to exist at all, because the world around her taught her it was invisible. As she matures, the inheritance of shadows manifests in subtle but powerful ways. She may struggle to know what she truly feels, often confusing her emotions with those projected onto her by others. She might experience a sense of hollowness when she looks inward, as though some essential piece of her identity was never allowed to take form. The silence of her childhood echoes into her adult relationships, where she may still hesitate to speak her truth, fearing that her voice will disrupt or disappoint. Yet hidden in this silence lies also the seed of profound perception, for what she lacked outwardly, she developed inwardly, the ability to read deeply into the unseen layers of human experience, a gift born from surviving within the shadows of those who could not truly see her. The mask of adaptation begins forming as a survival strategy in the earliest stages of a daughter's life, when she realizes that authenticity is not rewarded but punished, ignored, or distorted into something shameful. In a home ruled by narcissistic dynamics, the child learns that her role is not to simply be, but to perform, to embody the image that will keep her safe from criticism, manipulation, or emotional abandonment. She becomes a mirror rather than a being with her own reflection. Each mask she wears is crafted from necessity, the mask of the obedient child, the mask of the achiever, the mask of the caregiver. These masks are not chosen freely but forged under the weight of conditional love. She discovers that when she plays a role, she gains temporary approval, but when she reveals her raw self, she is met with coldness, ridicule, or indifference. The masks become second skin, and eventually she no longer knows where the performance ends and her true identity begins. As she grows, this adaptation becomes a paradoxical gift and burden. The mask gives her the ability to navigate multiple worlds, to shift her presence depending on what others expect. She can move with fluid grace in social settings, appear composed under stress, and adjust to environments with ease. People may admire her adaptability, her strength, and her apparent self-sufficiency. Yet beneath this appearance lies a gnawing uncertainty. Does anyone truly know her, or do they only know the roles she has perfected? This constant shape-shifting denies her the security of a stable self, leaving her with an inner restlessness that no external success can soothe. The mask also serves as a shield, protecting her from the raw vulnerability of rejection. If someone disapproves, she can always tell herself it was the mask that was rejected, not the fragile essence hidden behind it. But this protection comes at a cost. She struggles to experience genuine intimacy. The fear of being exposed, of being seen as she is without the armor of performance, keeps her relationships bound by a quiet distance. Even in love, she may feel as though she is acting out a script rather than speaking from her soul. The longing to be accepted fully wars against the terror of being unveiled, leaving her caught between hunger and fear. Over time, the weight of the mask deepens. It begins to fracture under the strain of inner conflict, for no mask can permanently silence the voice of the authentic self. That self presses against the surface, demanding to be known, but years of suppression have made its expression uncertain and fragile. She may stand in front of a mirror and wonder who she truly is, stripped of expectations, stripped of roles, stripped of everything she has carried to earn survival. This confusion is both her wound and her opportunity, for the very masks that once enslaved her reveal the depth of her resilience. She has learned to adapt, but within that adaptation lies the hidden possibility of transformation, the chance to finally peel away the layers and encounter her truest face, unmasked, unafraid, and alive. An intuitive radar for deception emerges in the daughter of narcissistic parents, not as a natural gift she freely cultivated, but as a mechanism she was forced to develop in order to survive the unpredictable and often hostile climate of her upbringing. In a home where truth is distorted, where words and actions rarely align, and where manipulation is disguised as love, she learns that reality cannot be taken at face value. She becomes hyper-attuned to subtleties that most overlook. The flicker in someone's eyes that contradicts their smile, the shift in tone that belies the spoken reassurance, the unspoken tension that hangs in the room long before an outburst erupts. For her, intuition is not a mystical sense, but a finely honed survival skill, sharpened through years of decoding the hidden layers beneath her parents' performances. She learns to hear what is not said, to notice what is concealed, and to prepare herself for emotional storms before they arrive. This radar, though forged in pain, often gives her an almost uncanny perception in her interactions with others. She can sense dishonesty long before it is proven, feel insincerity in words that others might accept without question, and detect the underlying motivations behind behaviors that seem harmless on the surface. Her ability to read body language, pauses, inconsistencies, and contradictions becomes second nature. She may even find herself finishing others' sentences internally, anticipating their reactions before they are spoken, because she has lived too long in a world where missteps could provoke anger or withdrawal. She does not wait for truth to be revealed. She gathers it from fragments and signals that most would dismiss as insignificant. Yet this gift is also a burden. It keeps her in a state of constant vigilance, unable to fully relax into the moment. Her nervous system remains conditioned to anticipate danger even when none exists, scanning for betrayal, dishonesty, or rejection. While others may enjoy the innocence of trust, she struggles with it, always questioning, always analyzing, never entirely surrendering to the possibility of pure authenticity in another. The very skill that once protected her now becomes a wall that separates her from ease, for she cannot simply believe in words without feeling the need to test them against the hidden motives beneath. This radar also deepens her empathy because in detecting deception, she also detects pain, insecurity, and fear in others. She understands the masks people wear, the lies they tell themselves, and the projections they cast onto the world. Her awareness of deception extends beyond manipulation into a broader recognition of human frailty. She sees not only the lie but the wound that gave birth to it, not only the manipulation but the emptiness driving it. This capacity can make her a healer, a confidant, or a guide for others, yet it also leaves her vulnerable to exhaustion, for she feels compelled to hold more than her share of truth. In time, this radar may shift from a burden into a form of wisdom, but only if she learns to balance it with boundaries. For the daughter of narcissistic parents, the gift of sensing deception is not simply about exposing falsehoods in others, but about reclaiming the ability to trust her own perceptions, to separate her truth from the chaos of her upbringing, and to recognize that while deception exists in the world, so does authenticity, love, and the possibility of genuine connection. The burden of guilt and over-responsibility in the daughter of narcissistic parents begins when she is too young to even understand what responsibility means, yet she is made to carry the weight of emotions, conflicts, and disappointments that never belonged to her. In a home where the parent's needs overshadow the child's, she learns that her role is to soothe, to comply, and to take on blame for situations beyond her control. If a parent is angry, she assumes she must have caused it. If a parent is withdrawn, she believes she has failed to bring them joy. If tension lingers in the air, she unconsciously feels it is her duty to restore balance. Instead of being allowed to experience the innocence of childhood, she is initiated into a distorted form of emotional labor where she serves as both scapegoat and caretaker. This dynamic burrows deep into her psyche, teaching her to equate love with sacrifice and safety with self-erasure. As she grows, the pattern does not vanish but expands. She becomes the one who overextends herself in friendships, relationships, and work, carrying burdens that are not hers to carry. She often feels a quiet compulsion to fix others, to rescue those who are broken, or to heal wounds that were never hers to mend. Her sense of worth becomes intertwined with the act of serving others, because for so long her existence was validated only when she was useful, accommodating, or selfless. This creates a cycle where she feels uneasy when not giving, uncomfortable when receiving, and almost guilty for simply existing without contributing something in return. The world becomes a stage where she must constantly prove her right to belong through effort and sacrifice. The guilt that shapes her is not rational but deeply ingrained, a residue of years spent absorbing the projections of those who could not hold their own pain. Even when she knows intellectually that she is not at fault, her body and emotions tell a different story. A simple disagreement can leave her feeling crushed by the belief that she has caused harm. A request for space from someone she loves may feel like an accusation. She apologizes excessively, not because she has done something wrong, but because guilt is the lens through which she has learned to interpret connection. This guilt often masquerades as empathy, yet it drains her spirit, leaving her exhausted from the invisible weight she carries. At the same time, her over-responsibility can draw her into relationships where she is taken advantage of, as those who recognize her willingness to give exploit her generosity. She becomes the emotional anchor, the dependable one, the caretaker of crises. While others lean on her, few notice the toll it takes on her soul, yet hidden within this burden is also a clue to her deepest need, to learn the boundary between what is hers to carry and what must be laid down. Only then can the guilt that shaped her become a path to freedom, where she recognizes that love is not earned through sacrifice, and responsibility does not mean surrendering her own life to the demands of others. A fragile self-worth hidden behind perfectionism is one of the most defining yet concealed traits in the daughter of narcissistic parents, for she grows up believing that love is conditional, that acceptance must be earned, and that her very presence is not enough without performance. As a child, she quickly discovers that approval arrives only when she excels, when she behaves impeccably, or when she fulfills the expectations imposed upon her. When she falters, fails, or shows vulnerability, she is met not with compassion, but with criticism, indifference, or shame. This teaches her to build an identity around doing rather than being, striving endlessly to prove her value in a world that never taught her that value was intrinsic. Her accomplishments, kindness, and diligence become a shield to hide the deep and gnawing fear that she is inadequate at her core. Perfectionism, in her case, is not the pursuit of excellence, but the pursuit of safety. Each perfect grade, polished appearance, or flawless performance is a way to ward off rejection, to silence the inner voice that whispers she is unworthy. She sets standards for herself so impossibly high that even success feels hollow, because no external achievement can fill the void left by the absence of unconditional love. What others see as resilience and competence, she feels as anxiety and self-doubt, for she is never allowed to rest in the comfort of being enough. Her self-worth is fragile precisely because it is tethered to things outside of her control: the opinions of others, the approval of authority, the fleeting recognition that disappears as soon as the next challenge arises. In adulthood, this fragility often manifests in overwork, self-sacrifice, and an inability to accept mistakes as part of the human condition. A single error may feel like a collapse of her entire identity, because failure confirms the secret fear that she is defective. She may spend hours replaying conversations in her mind, worrying if she said the wrong thing, striving to maintain a flawless image in her relationships, career, and even appearance. The external world may admire her discipline, grace, or achievements, but inside she feels a constant tension, a fragile structure built on the shifting sands of external validation. This perfectionism also complicates her relationships, for she fears that if she reveals her flaws, she will be abandoned. She may hide her struggles, suppress her needs, and present a polished version of herself to maintain the illusion of worthiness. Yet this facade prevents her from experiencing the intimacy she longs for, because true closeness requires vulnerability, and vulnerability feels dangerous to someone conditioned to equate imperfection with rejection. The paradox of her existence is that she longs to be seen, but only in a way that conceals the very parts of herself that need love the most. Beneath the layers of perfectionism lies a self-longing for gentleness, for acceptance without condition, for the freedom to fail and still be loved. The fragile self-worth she carries is not a permanent wound, but a reflection of what was denied to her, and it is through facing the illusion of perfection that she can begin to reclaim her true worth, one not built on performance, but on the undeniable truth of her existence. The potential for profound transformation in the daughter of narcissistic parents emerges not in spite of her suffering, but through it, for the very wounds that shaped her also contain the seeds of her deepest growth. From childhood, she is forced to confront realities most never face: the absence of unconditional love, the distortion of truth, the weight of responsibility that does not belong to her. And though these experiences fracture her innocence, they also awaken in her a rare resilience. She learns to endure, to adapt, to survive in hostile emotional climates, and within this endurance lies the possibility of alchemy, the turning of pain into wisdom, silence into voice, and shadows into light. Her transformation does not come suddenly but gradually, as she begins to see the patterns that have ruled her life and recognizes that what she inherited need not define what she becomes. The first step in this transformation is awareness, the dawning realization that the shame, guilt, and confusion she has carried are not evidence of her inadequacy, but imprints of her environment. This awareness allows her to separate her identity from the roles imposed upon her, to see that the masks she wore and the responsibilities she carried were survival strategies, not reflections of her true essence. With each recognition, she loosens the grip of the past and creates space for something new to emerge. The silence that once imprisoned her becomes the ground from which her authentic voice can rise, trembling at first, but growing stronger as she learns that speaking her truth does not bring the catastrophe she once feared. Her transformation also deepens her capacity for empathy and understanding. Having lived through deception, manipulation, and neglect, she knows intimately what pain feels like, and this knowledge makes her sensitive to the struggles of others. But unlike before, when her empathy was entangled with over-responsibility, she learns to use it with discernment, offering compassion without surrendering herself completely. What was once a vulnerability becomes a strength, a way to connect deeply with others without losing her own boundaries. She becomes both tender and strong, able to stand firmly in her truth while still holding space for the truths of others. In reclaiming her worth, she also begins to embrace imperfection. Perfectionism, once her shield against rejection, gradually softens as she discovers that love and belonging are not earned through flawless performance, but through authenticity. She allows herself to fail, to stumble, to reveal her fragility, and in doing so, she experiences a freedom she never knew in childhood. Each moment of imperfection accepted becomes a step toward wholeness, a dismantling of the fragile image she once clung to, and a return to the unpolished but radiant self she was always meant to be. The profound transformation of such a daughter is not only personal but collective, for in breaking the cycle of silence, shame, and conditional love, she creates new patterns for those who come after her. Her healing becomes a light for others still wandering in the shadows of similar wounds, showing that while the past may shape us, it does not imprison us. Out of the fragments of a fractured childhood, she can build a self that is whole, resilient, and alive with the wisdom that only suffering transformed into meaning can create. Every daughter of narcissistic parents walks through life carrying both a curse and a gift, shaped by silence, adaptation, guilt, perfectionism, and the intuitive radar that once kept her safe. She may at times feel fractured, unseen, or lost within the roles she was forced to play, yet within those very fractures lies the potential for profound healing. Her journey is not one of erasing the past, but of reclaiming her voice from it, of peeling away the masks until her authentic self can breathe freely. The traits she carries, though born of pain, are also keys to her awakening, for they equip her with depth, resilience, and empathy that cannot be taught in any other way. When she learns to release the burdens that were never hers, when she embraces imperfection as part of her humanity, she does not simply survive her past, she transcends it. She becomes not just a daughter of shadows, but a woman of light, turning inherited wounds into wisdom and showing that even in the most distorted beginnings, the human spirit carries within it the power to create beauty, wholeness, and truth.